everybody, and welcome back to Takeout Takeaway. It looks a little different here, buddy, but I
like this perspective better.
I do like this perspective better.
I like it a lot.
Kevin
better.
Especially likes this perspective better. Kevin is always annoyed. He's like, but it makes me
It's
look
so
fat or
weird.
whatever. Yeah, this one is far more natural, and I think it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
Which is why this kind of camera angle. It looks better, but isn't super conducive for live streaming, and so that's why you're not watching this live. We're going to start pre-recording Takeout Takeaway, but that's going to expand our ability to get guests on the show because not everybody can be here at exactly 6 o'clock on a Thursday, and it's gonna enable us to do some more cool stuff in the future. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure
Who doesn't like cool stuff, right?
For real, exactly. So maybe if it weren't an imposition, you could hit that little subscribe button down below our video. Yeah, just push that button, and then you'll get notifications every time that we post stuff, which is going to be far more frequently now. We took a little break because I had to train interns, Elliot.
It's not my fault.
I know. I got actual help, and little did I know I was going to spend 2.5 months getting them organized and like placing the infrastructure so that they can regularly post.
I got salad on your table.
Way to go. That's
Sorry.
why we have a tablecloth. It's fine.
It's okay.
We're eating salads today. Elliot is making me eat a salad.
It's
from Salada.
I'm not ashamed at all.
Yeah.
It's a new thing for me.
Why?
I mean, I don't know. When the first time I used to hate salads. Could not stand them. Hated the taste of it, hated the texture of it, nothing. Didn't like it. Even vegetables. Hated vegetables. Uh-huh. And then when I actually started really getting into understanding working out and eating better and all that kind of stuff, I did first I did P90X for a while with some friends of mine in college. And that's like the DVD. The DVDs, gotcha. And you do the workout. Oh my gosh, they're rough. Okay. The first day it does
have X in the name.
It does have an X. Yeah. The first day I did their leg workout, I went into the living room to try and sit down, and I didn't want to sit down. That's how sore my legs were after the first time I did that. But it's fantastic. Anyways, a couple of years later, I found Whole30, and I did Whole30 for the first time. Yeah, and
that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm also eating salad.
And when I started doing Whole30, one of the things that they say is that your tastes change. The way things taste to you change because you're cutting out so many terrible things in your diet, and you're being forced to only be able to eat this kind of stuff. Right. And so when you're forced to eat it, it's one of those things that you're the way things kind of start to taste to you change. And I found that completely true to the point that I enjoy eating vegetables now. Right. I mean, I eat salads. I would never have touched a salad. I even tried eating salads when I was in college, and I was like, this is disgusting. I'm never doing this again. But now I find myself like going somewhere and go, you know what? I want a taco salad. Like, give me a salad.
There's some great salads.
Let me go to Salada and give me a thing to eat. So... Yeah.
I would say
we're eating salads.
It's less of that your taste changes and more that you don't crave the bad things that like you're addicted to. Like I find that like I just physically I don't want to eat the crazy garbage
because you know how it makes you feel.
Yeah,
like it makes you. Yeah. It may taste. It's one of those things like it may taste good in the moment. Yeah. But 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's I've had some dark days of. Falling into a food addiction, and so this is very healthy for me. I'm excited.
Cheese on the table.
Look, does it look like I'm worried about that?
It's a black table, and that one little orange thing just sticks out.
It's like a black car.
Exactly.
That's why I don't buy a black car.
Never. You know I've done it one time, and I'd never do it again.
You know who's the smartest colored car?
Who's that?
Jaden Perez.
Why is that?
Have you seen? I don't know what it is. It's an SUV type car.
Is it tan?
It's like off-white. It's not white, but it's not tan. It's like a kind of cream color. But if you were just
Hides all
looking
kinds of
at
dirt.
it, if you were looking at it in the daylight, you would think it was white.
Yeah.
But it just hides. I was like, I don't know what that color is called,
There you
but
go.
I need it.
That's the
on my
way you
next
do it.
vehicle. Anyways, we should probably talk about
Yeah, let's talk about the sermon.
actual
Isn't that what we're
sermon.
here for?
Yeah, a new change on Takeout Takeaway is happening. We also, like before, we would talk about the sermon from the day before because we were doing it live, and so we have the ability to do that. Now, I think it works better to talk about the sermon from the week before. Not only does that give like you and I better preparation time, or whoever might be on the show that week. Not only does that give us better preparation time, but also like whenever you're like subscribing to us on YouTube, it makes that flow better. Like you're going to get your sermon on Monday, your small group video on Wednesday, and those will go together. But then if we did Takeout Takeaway about the week of, then that wouldn't go with the sermon in the small group for that week. And so
I gotcha.
now it all kind of, it fits and it satisfies my OCD. And so I
It's all about you, Blaine.
thank you.
It's all about you.
It is. I mean, fundamentally. So, but yeah, last week Kevin preached, goodness gracious, a phenomenal sermon. As always, we are continuing
Rather large passage.
A rather large passage. We are continuing our series in Acts. And we are in Acts 14.
Something
I
like that.
remember. Yeah, something like we probably should know.
We'll talk about what it actually is.
But it's essentially we've now started the first missionary journey. We just left the island of Cyprus, and we're moving onto the mainland of Asia Minor. We hit Phrygia and Iconium and Lystra and Derbe in this particular. I love the missionary journeys. The
Acts
missionary
14.
journeys are like the best. Oh gosh, I almost spilled that coffee. Are like the best. Maybe not the best, but are a fantastically structured narrative. Like it really is one of the easiest to read. The missionary journeys and First and Second Samuel are just like it's just like
Oh,
watching-
they're great stories.
Yeah,
it's like reading a
fantastic.
novel.
Yeah,
it's
it's
fantastic.
And so I really enjoy the missionary journeys, especially this portion of the missionary journeys, because we're gonna get into some specific stuff here later. Specifically, Kevin drew that parallel that it seems to be apparent in the narrative between Herod. Is it Antipas? I can't remember which Herod it is. There's 3 Herods. How am I supposed to know?
There's so many Herods.
Yeah. It's one of the Herods is wearing this new shiny armor, and he's at this, where's the town that he's in? I can't remember what it's called. Tyre, Sidon, maybe. So it's a town near there.
Yeah.
But it's a specific amphitheater that still exists to this day. Like you can go to it. And it was designed so that the stage caught the sunlight at sunset. And so Herod is wearing this real shiny new material.
So he would glow.
Yeah, he was this incredibly divine, almost looking
Silly
figure.
Persians.
Yeah,
Persians used to do the same thing.
yeah, and so he people were like, he's the voice of a god, not of a man. And Herod's like, you know what?
Yes,
I am a
I
god.
am.
And
I'm going to
then
step away now.
Worms eat his intestines. So
Go figure.
It's just incredibly appetizing. But then, so we get a parallel passage here where we get, again, people who are identifying Paul and Barnabas as gods instead of men. And we get a very clear depiction of the kind of Christian reaction to the fact that we don't point others to ourselves. We point others to Christ continually through what we say and what we do in our lives. And as I was thinking about it, I don't think that many people are going about pretending that they are a god.
No.
But I think there is a certain pridefulness that goes with Christian community. Like being a part of a Christian community means that just like any social community, I'm not trying to say people are like, good or bad because of this, but just like any social community, there's some it's like social competition. Like you want to be seen as a valued contributing member of the community. So you kind of want to look smart in front of people. You want to look like you have your life together in front of people. And I sometimes wonder, especially with young people, the academic side of Christianity can kind of, I feel like, lead us into this trap of sitting in a small group and and talking about really deep biblical things because, oh, look how deep and learned I am. I don't know. Is that an impulse that you either experience yourself or have experienced in other people? And is that unchristian behavior? I mean, that sounds like an easy question, but
Yeah, no. So I'll say so. Let me start by talking about myself. One of the things that I've had to be very purposeful and work on is allowing others to speak, especially when I'm in a group like that, especially a small group. Because of the education that I've been blessed to be able to have, and the background that I have, and the fact that I've grown up in the church and all these kinds of things, I always, in the fact that I'm not necessarily a shy person, I've had the tendency to dominate conversations, especially in small groups, and talking about something and trying to get my point across. And some of that comes from the fact that you know, I come from a family where you have to kind of dominate if you want to get anything
big
said.
personalities.
Yeah. I mean, there's 5 of us. So, but so where I'm going with that is it's very simple. It's very easy to fall into that. I know about this. I'm going to talk about this. You need to listen to me and make it about what you have to say. And so one of the things I've had to work on is to allow others the opportunity to speak. And with that, not be super quick to say, no, that's not right, or you're wrong, or that kind of stuff. It's one of those things that you need to allow people the opportunity to kind of work things out for themselves and get to a place where they understand. Now, if they're saying something like blatantly wrong or unbiblical or something, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is what this, and I've had to do that a few times, but it can be very, especially when people look to you for answers, to really have that, let yourself get that big head, right? To really be prideful about, yes, I understand that. Yes, people are coming to me. I want to be that person. And you kind of get that puffed up chest of, hey, look at me. Yeah. And again, you have to fall back to Romans, right? Romans 12 says, don't let yourself think more highly of yourself than you ought.
Ouch.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things where you just have to be mindful of it because it's so easy to fall into. It's human nature to want to be recognized, to be given credit where credit is due, and to even take credit for things that aren't necessarily yours, even. And so you have to be careful with that. And no, it's not a good thing. It's not a right thing. It's not a biblical thing. It's not Christian to do that or anything like that. So you just have to be careful with that. And that's kind of where Paul and Barnabas are coming here, right? Yeah. They came in and they were just doing what they're supposed to do, but they're doing it with such authority and with such ability that the people see, like Kevin talked about, relating it to the story of Zeus and Hermes coming, right? So they have this story already in their head, and now they see these 2 guys come in and speaking with such authority that God has given to them, right? It's God-given authority, God-given power. They see them working these signs and these miracles and changing people's lives. I mean, it's especially for a lost generation, it's easy to think of them as something other than what they really are. Yeah. It's just one of those things that you just have to, we tend, even as believers though, right? We have a tendency to put even pastors that we admire, right, on such high pedestals. We actually kind of talked about this morning in our Devo, or actually after our Devo. We put especially socially well-known pastors on such high pedestals and think so highly of them, it's almost as though we're worshiping them, right? That we take what they say and we use what they say in arguments in theological discussions or Bible studies or whatever. Well, Piper said this, or Chandler said this, or Dever said this, or so-and-so said this. What does the Bible say? You know, they are still just men like the rest of us. And that's one of the things that Paul and Barnabas are trying to say to the people there as well. It's like, hey, no, like that, whoa, let's slow that down. I am just a man, just like you are. There's nothing special about me other than I know this good news and I've been told to go and share it. And that's what they were doing. And the same thing comes when you listen to podcasts and other pastors and everything. They are just men. And we need to remember that. Because, and the thing is when we place them on such a high pedestal, when they do fall, they fall hard. Yeah. And it affects us more than it should, rather than going, they messed up. Forgive and move on.
I mean, notably, very recently, was, what's his name?
Ravi. Is that one?
The Justin Bieber pastor. That sounds so pejorative. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure who you're talking about.
It's a really well-known pastor in New York, and
the Hillsong guy.
Yeah,
I don't know him.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, I know this. I know the what. I mean,
yeah, I know for a lot of people.
I didn't know who that was.
I know for a whole lot of people. Google it if you don't know what we're talking about. A whole lot of people.
Hillsong New York
were led into
yeah.
That really shook up, their idea of what their relationship with God was. Because I think that we fall into this trap of identifying people that we think have it all together and then emulating them so that we can, like them, also have it all together.
Right.
And then whenever we suddenly realize, oh, that person doesn't have it altogether like I thought that they did, I think it leads you into this thinking of, well, then what if this isn't even really real? Like if I thought he had it all together and he doesn't, then can anybody have it all together? And I think the obvious answer to that is no.
Yeah, and again, it goes. I think to understand what we mean when you as an individual, not necessarily you, but when an individual says, do they have it all together? It's what do you mean by do they have it all together? Do you mean that they're not messing up and they're absolutely perfect and they don't ever do anything wrong? Then no, nobody does. Now, if it means do they have it all together in that they're trying their best to do what God's called them to do and to live a life that's honoring to Him, yeah, you can have it all together. You very much so. You're not going to be perfect. It's the same thing as trying to look. So here's a perfect example. Okay. It's like trying to look at somebody's life through Facebook and Instagram and say, man, they have a perfect life. Nothing is ever wrong with them. But what do you post? Do you post the stuff that's wrong about you? No.
I do.
Most people don't, though. When you look at these Instagram famous people, they're posting the most...
They're called influencers.
That's how out of the loop I am. I don't even have it. I deleted Instagram off of my phone.
But now you can't like Renault stuff on Instagram.
I know. I miss out all the time, and I apologize for that.
I'm so sorry. I diverted you.
No. So the thing is generally though, you use those platforms to post the best things that you're about, right? Right. Places you get to go and see and visit, the fun you're having, the high points of your life.
It is an airbrushed reality.
Yeah, if you really hit just rock bottom and you're struggling with something, but generally even then you don't really share about it until you've come out of it.
Right.
So it's not I'm in this low point and that's it. It's I was at this low point and now I'm out of it and things are great. But you only get these snapshots, right? And so that's the same thing we get when we look at these pastors and even our pastor, when you look at Nathan or even Kevin or Justin, when you look at these guys, generally, most people, the only thing they see is what's on stage. And what's on stage, they can be as transparent as they want to, but even then, you're only getting a snapshot of their entire life. And so again, you have to understand, they are just men. They're just like you and I. And we need to remember that. And again, that's not to diminish the things that they're saying. That's not to diminish that what they're saying isn't correct, isn't right, that it can't change your life. But also understand that they are just men. They do mess up. They sin. They're sinful beings just like the rest of us.
Even beyond social media, life itself, observing, even if you're friends with somebody, like a colleague at work with somebody, even that picture of reality are only snapshots of that person's life. Exactly like, this particular pastor, I'm sure that there were people who were legitimately close to him that still went through that same experience of, oh, man, I wish I was a God-following man like this person, and emulating their lifestyle and their behavior. I think whenever we see people like that mess up, it diminishes the testimony of man, but increases the testimony of the gospel. It is this idea that, this is a religion or a worldview, an ideology that supports the fact that, I screw up on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. Now, here's what I don't want people to hear.
Yeah.
What I don't want people to hear is that we can't put people that we know and admire as examples for us. Yeah. I mean, if you look at Paul's writings, how many times does he say, do as I do what I'm doing? Because he's being the example. He's showing you how this works. He's showing you what it means to be Christ-like. And our goal should be to live a life such that you can say, look at me. If you want to know how to live this life, if you want to know how this works and have it work for you, follow my example. Do what I'm doing. That's you want to be able to get to that point, not in a selfish, lifting yourself up and putting yourself on a pedestal kind of way, but in a meaningful, I love you and I care about you and I want to disciple you and I want to show you how to live this life so that you can do it well as also.
See, I just had a conversation with Kevin the other day about how I didn't feel qualified to be a leader in the church. I mean, that's what I am in my position. I didn't feel qualified to be a leader in the church. I didn't feel qualified to be a leader for other people's lives because my life is so. I'm making up a word. Is unemulatable. My life is not to be replicated. I don't want to make disciples. I hesitate to actively disciple people that I know and I love because I fear instilling the really difficult things that I struggle with in those people. I feel like I'm passing on, sure, a lineage of grace, but also a lineage of a curse. And that's a really frustrating thing for me. And I wouldn't want people to treat me as an example, and I wouldn't want people to take hold of their Christian relationships in exactly the same way that I do, because oftentimes I feel like mine isn't working right. And Kevin is stupid and really helpful, and
he does that sometimes.
Yeah, but he was saying that that's exactly what doing Christian life together is. It's not you can't be a discipler. It's not, the reality is not that you have to wait until you have it all together to start discipling people. We take each other and hold each other up and move together towards Christ as a unit, not as, hey, follow me. It's not necessarily that I'm replicating Christian believers like myself. It is that I'm acknowledging I don't have it all together. I don't understand what Christian life looks or feels like. I'm on a path to figuring that out.
Right.
Join me in that.
Right. So what I'll add to that is we get this concept of I think we take the practice of disciple making and we lift it up to the level of being a pastor. Yeah. Not everybody's called to be a pastor. That's not everybody's call. We can't all do that. There are people who are totally gifted and capable and are 100% called to do that. Guys like Nathan and Justin and Kevin, those guys, they are absolutely 100% called to do that. That's what they're called, and they do fantastic at it. Everything from the pulpit to the counseling, everything in between, and they do it very, very well. Discipleship is one of those things that we're all called to do. The problem is that people have a misunderstanding of what it means to disciple somebody. Discipling somebody does not mean that you have to sit down and work through an hour-long workbook every single week, and you get a stamp of approval and a certificate and a diploma saying, okay, you've been discipled. Next one. All discipleship means is to help somebody who is a few steps behind you or just getting started move one step closer. That's it. If you can help someone do that, if you can help someone just move one step closer, you've helped disciple them. Now, in some cases, that one step may be life-changing to that individual. In some cases, it may have just been another step along the journey, another drop in the bucket. But the fact of the matter is that you've done what you're supposed to do in your calling to help that individual move from where they were to where they are now. And that's all it is. It's very simple. It doesn't require, I mean, if you have the opportunity to sit down and have a regimented, I think I just made that word up. I don't know if that's a real word.
I think it's a word.
A proper regiment of, hey, we're going to go through, and one of the popular books we hear is Greg Ogden's discipleship making book.
Right.
If you have an opportunity to sit down and go through that with someone, with a young believer, a new believer, or a youth, or even a peer, and have that regiment of, hey, we're going to get together every week and we're going to work through this, or we're going to work through Wayne Grudem's systematic theology, and we're just going to look at a chapter every couple of weeks, and we're all we're going to do is we're going to sit down and talk about it, just to grow in your faith, to move closer. Do it.
Yeah.
Have at it. Because here's the thing, even if you don't know exactly what's going on, you're going to learn from it just as much as they are. And again, that goes back to what Kevin said. It's about living the life together. It's not about one person saying, I have all the answers, pick me. It's about, hey, I want to help you move from where you are and just take that next step. That's all discipleship. It's not discipleship. When I say I'm going to help disciple you, it's not I'm going to take you and pull you to the finish line. It's I just want to help you move from one step from where you are and at least take one step forward. That's it. It's that simple. I think we make it so much more complicated than it really needs to be sometimes, and we make it into this big, grandiose thing that's like I don't know. Right. I can't do that. That's not me.
I'm not equipped enough. I don't have enough answers to do that. Yeah.
If you know the gospel, you know more than somebody else.
Yikes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you may not have memorized all the theological stuff and been through the training and blah, blah, blah. But if you know the gospel, you know more than someone who doesn't. And helping to lead someone is just the first step in discipling them. And it's just, it can be as complicated as you want to make it to be, but it doesn't have to be. I used to think the same thing about discipleship, and discipleship comes in so many forms and so many different ways. Yes, the sitting down and looking at a specific passage or a specific thing and working through a book, that's one way to do. That's a very specific and a very dedicated and a very planned out way to do discipleship. But you can do discipleship in so many ways. I was never one of those guys. I've never been sat down and said, hey, no one has ever said to me, hey, I want to sit down with you every once a week, and I want to work through this book, and I want to help disciple you. Never done that. Yeah. Never been through that.
Yeah.
Personally, with someone wanting to pour into me like that.
Right.
But I have been discipled through living life together with youth ministers and pastors. I've spent my life working in churches. I mean, I grew up in church. My first job was at a church, and different men that I have worked with through the years have poured into me as we worked together, as we did life together, as we did different things, and they taught me and they communicated with me and they asked about life and all these things, and it wasn't a scheduled event. It was just one of those things. We saw each other all the time, and it just kind of developed that way. And so I've treated my ministry a lot like that as well. As I work with guys in the sound booth, and I meet with them, and I talk with them, I work with them every single week. I take the downtimes to talk about life. Hey, how is this going? How is that going? How's your quiet time? How is this? Hey, you should really think about doing this, or hey, you should really look at this, or, and kind of work with them that way. And so there's different ways that discipleship can happen. But like Kevin said, it's about living life together. It's about that Christian brotherhood and living that life together.
So you're making it sound easy. How do you define success then? In endeavoring to disciple somebody, how can I say that yes, this person is I'm making disciples?
Again, it's one of those things that it's hard to define. Because I would even say that for people that have gone through the regiment of that weekly thing and worked through the book, even necessarily completing it, they wouldn't necessarily say that they succeeded.
Yeah.
Ultimate success would be to see that individual that you purposely poured your life into and talked to and spoke to and all that kind of stuff, which is another aspect of it. Is it does what, regardless of how you disciple somebody, it does need to be purposeful. It's not just a random thing. Like I feel like it needs to be very like I'm gonna with intent and with
friendship. It's
right. It's with intent and with purpose. Yeah. I'm gonna pour into this person's life. I think if you can, the ultimate success, I think that everyone that's seeking that would love to see is to see them turn around and start doing that with somebody else.
Oof.
Is to see that discipleship grow to a second, third, fourth, fifth generation, right? That would be the ultimate success. But again, I think success also could be measured in, hey, you know what? They started having a quiet time. Hey, you know what? Their prayer life has increased. Hey, you know what? They've started speaking better and not being so mean or using foul language. Or if you can see changes, I think if you can start to see changes and to see whether it's subtle or drastic, that you can kind of see, hey, you know what? They are taking those steps and they are growing and they are getting better.
Yikes.
Then I think that is a measure of success.
Well, and that's scary because I would define that success as supernatural.
Yeah.
That's supernatural change.
It is.
In somebody's life, which means you didn't do it. God did it through you.
Right.
And now you got to be a part of that process. And that's bonkers to think about.
Now, as far as, again, that's a measure of success. So I would also say that if you have, with everything that you have, poured into them and done everything you know to do with them and done everything you know to work with them and to help them and to guide them and to help disciple them, then at the end of the day, you're correct. At the end of the day, it's all them and God. It all falls on what they decide to do, on what they want to do, and how God has chosen to work in their lives. And at the end of the day, your personal success would be in, did you do what you're supposed to do? And I think if you did that, if you accomplished that task, then success on your part is done. Like you've had success as far as doing what God's called you to do. Right. So working with that individual through the book and having completed that task and they've graduated and they've moved off and they completely let go of everything and decided, you know what, this isn't for me. That's not a failure on your part. That's a failure on their part. You succeeded in doing what God called you to do and intentionally seeking that individual out, pouring into them and trying your best to help them to live the life and to live with them this Christian life, then I think that's a huge success for you.
And you don't know, let's say something like that did happen. They fell away or whatever. You don't know what kind of change might happen in their life beyond that. Like you have gone to the extent of planting these seeds,
Mm-hmm.
Paul plants, Apollos waters, God's the one who gives the growth. And so
Right.
who knows what kind of, supernatural change can be.
They can be stubborn
wrought
seeds sometimes.
So given that definition of success for creating disciples, that is fundamentally Paul and Barnabas's goal on this missionary journey, is to go through these towns and to create new disciples for Christ. Would you say in this scene that happens in Lystra that they are successful in that endeavor?
I would say yes.
Okay.
For two reasons. One, again, what did they do? They preached the gospel, right? They did what they were supposed to do.
That's all it takes, Elliot. It can't be that easy.
Surprisingly, you would who'd have thunk it, right?
Right.
They did what they were supposed to. They preached the gospel. They preached the kingdom of heaven. They preached Christ, salvation. They did what they were supposed to do. They did what they were called to do. That decision to follow after Christ falls on the individual and the work that God does. So they did what they were supposed to. Seeds were planted, and they were stoned and chased out. They've done everything they can do. Again, like you said, it's on God to make it grow.
Yeah,
and it sounds weird to say. It's like, okay, it's on you. It's you have to do it. But at the end of the day, God's the only one that can change hearts. He is the only one that can change a heart from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. He's the only one that can do it. There is nothing that you can do to make somebody saved. You can tell them in the most loving way about who Jesus is, or you can preach hellfire and brimstone.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to take God changing their heart to open their eyes to see what's going on. And that's on him to do that.
Yeah.
And,
And like I said, it makes seemingly Paul and Barnabas may not have succeeded. I would say like a very obvious definition of success in this scene. They come and they preach the gospel. Thousands of converts, thousands of people are, absolutely, we believe in the gospel. We don't see that here. And so I think there is a tendency objectively to say, well, then maybe this was, a failure. This stop on the trip, maybe this was, maybe God didn't act here. But later on in this story, spoiler alert, later on in this story, they make a big loop. And so they go through the missionary journey. These are some of the very first stops. Like I said, Cyprus, Phrygia, Perga, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe. Then they make a big loop and they come back the exact same way that they went before. So they pass through all these towns. Literally, these people kill Paul for all intents and purposes. Literally,
when I was listening to Kevin's sermon again in preparation, he mentioned the fact because as I read through it and listened to him read through it again, when that scene where Paul gets stoned and then all the disciples come and stand around him and then he goes back into the city the next day, he mentions the moment I heard that, I was like, he was dead.
Yeah.
He came back to life. God brought him back. Yeah. He said, "You're not done yet."
Yeah.
And then Kevin said that a lot of commentators actually think that was a miraculous one. I think it is. I think he actually was stoned. Yeah. I would not be surprised because knowing Paul and the way that he does things and the fact that he didn't make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
He didn't come back and go, "Man, I was dead. Why do I have to be back here?"
Yeah.
He just kind of said, "Okay, we're going to move right along." And it's just like all of his other persecutions. I was stoned, I was shipwrecked, I was all of these things. But he doesn't harp on that. He mentions them. He's like, "Yeah, all this stuff happened to me. But did you hear about Jesus?" It's always about telling someone about Christ and about the good news and that kind of stuff. He does not dwell on his persecution. He does not dwell on the things that were done to him. He does not dwell on the hardships that he suffers. It's Luke that points those things out.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he doesn't make a big deal out of it almost makes you wonder, did he actually die in that stoning?
Yeah.
Or, was he just really badly hurt? Because he just got up and walked. If someone stoned me, even if I didn't die, I wouldn't just be getting up and walking.
But, for him to literally be stoned and then 10 months later walk back and be like, hey guys,
Hey, I'm
it's
back.
like the most bonkers thing. But then, I think it's 16 that we see them come back to Lystra, and that's where we meet Timothy. Is a disciple in Lystra. You know, his parents obviously. Some effect came from Paul and Barnabas's teaching.
Well,
because
and,
we get
and
this
again,
huge,
you never know. You never know what seeds were planted when Paul and Barnabas were there the first time. I mean, just because, some of the most short-lived plants are those that pop up overnight, right?
Yeah.
And so to see that, you never know. I mean, a giant redwood didn't grow overnight. Mustard seeds come from these tiny little things, right? You don't know what was planted that first time. And so to see the fruit of that labor when they come back through, I'm sure was a joyous occasion for them to see people that actually came from them having been there that first time is a joyous thing. There's numerous times. So for example, a modern example, in South Sudan, Shannon and Carrie had been living over there for, I don't know, it was probably 6 or 7 years at this point, 7 or 8 years at this point. And there was a particular village that they had been trying to reach. They wanted to go in and share the gospel and teach the people and disciple them and start a church there and all this kind of stuff. And they had done a couple of things and done some storing and kind of share the gospel a little bit, but people were not kind to them. They persecuted them harshly in that region. They didn't like them being there. It's very difficult to do work there. And so finally, just like the disciples did, Shannon shook the dust off of his feet. Yeah. Shook the dust off his feet and said, I'm done.
Yeah.
And
I've done what I can.
I've done what I can. I'm letting it be. And he moved on to a different area. Now, a couple of years later, the Siglers come in and they move. They do a little bit of work in some other areas. Well, they go back and he's like, we haven't had any success over there. You're more than welcome to try, but we're not having any success over there. And lo and behold, they start having success there. So, it's one of those things that you don't know what was said in the time that Shannon and Carrie were trying to work there that finally took root for someone else to come in and say, hey, I'm saying the same thing this other guy was, and it actually take and actually see that fruit come about, right? So just because you share the gospel with someone and you don't see immediate reaction to it or to a group of people, don't think that you failed in your task. Well, because you may be the one that's just planting those seeds, or you may be the one that's just pouring a little water over the soil. It may be someone, it may not be until 10 years down the road before someone really sees fruit from the work that was done beforehand.
It interestingly, it makes me think of in missions that feels like a fairly obvious example. But if we look at like church life and the way that we think about churches, what would you say is a successful church? Just immediately, like.
Who are you talking to? I mean, again, so it's not. It really, as much as we talk about numbers. Right. As much as we talk about...
And that's exactly where I'm going.
Yeah. You would say, much as we want to talk about, is it, do we have 200 people in the chair, in the room? Or do we have 50 people in the room? Or do we have 500 people in the room? Our rooms seat, the main sanctuary seats 800 people in it.
Yeah.
V2 sits 400 people. North sits 400 people. So are we talking about those rooms aren't full, so we're not successful? Or successful, are we reaching people for Christ? Are we building them up once they come? In other words, are we discipling them when they come? And is that process continuing, or is it stopping right there? I would say a successful church would be those that bring people to Christ, disciple them, and then they go out and make disciples. That, to me, would be a successful church.
And I think that honestly, you can meet the parameters of that definition of success as a small church,
definitely.
with less than 100 people,
Definitely.
or as a huge church with 100,000 people. I think that parameter of success doesn't change depending on
there
numbers
are people.
but
Here's the thing: is that there's nothing wrong with a large church. I mean,
Right.
obviously, we work for a large church.
Absolutely.
If I saw something wrong with it, I wouldn't be working here.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with a large church. There are things that a large church can do that a small church cannot do. Financially, resource-wise, people-wise, that there are just things that we can do, that we have been blessed to be able to do, that a small church just cannot do. But there are people that we can reach that a small church can't reach. For example, doing the number of mission trips and stuff that we do.
Right.
There are places we can go and things we can do.
We have resources that allow
exactly
us
to help us
bigger ideas,
the equipment that we have to do shows like this. To do the
outreach ministries that we have,
the streaming things and all that kind of stuff, the resources we're able to develop, not just have, that we can reach people that a small church can't reach. But there are people that a small church can reach that we can't. There are people, and I know them personally, people that I know that feel anxiety coming to a large church like this. They don't feel comfortable being here. It's too many people. It's too big a room. It's too whatever. And so they go to a really tiny church. There is nothing wrong with either one of them, and nothing wrong with anything in between.
It's just really interesting. I think even a lot of Christians would go to the point of saying, if they saw a church that was a little tiny church, and then it started getting members and members and members and members and members, they'd be like, God's doing something there. That church is growing. That church is successful because it's growing. And I don't think that that's really a terribly biblical definition of success.
Not necessarily. Of course, I wouldn't be quick to say that God's not doing something. Right. Obviously, some things drawing people to that church.
For sure.
So I would probably agree with the fact that God's doing something there.
Yeah. Now,
whether or not they're being successful at what God's calling them to do, and the reason that He's calling people to that congregation, I don't know. I'd have to be in the church to see as to whether or not they're succeeding in doing what God called them to do.
And to be clear, we're not speaking about any other church, not even necessarily our own or any other church.
Yeah. No, this is very ambiguous and generalized.
My point with bringing this up is I think even Christians have this very capitalistic is the first word that comes to mind, and that's not exactly what I mean.
Materialistic?
But it's this really worldly way of defining success, even in Christian endeavors. And I think so we take those Christian endeavors in the way that we're defining success for those and apply them to our own lives.
Right.
And we think, if I'm not growing and making more disciples in that way, I must not be succeeding either,
And again, that's not, we don't want to push the envelope of legalism. Right. Our salvation is not dependent upon
how many disciples
we make.
Right.
It's not. Yes, if you have opportunity to pour into someone's life and to share with them and to help lead them and guide them, by all means, do it. Do it. Don't shy away from that.
But is our success as a discipler dependent on how many disciples we make?
No. Again, you're falling back on numbers.
Yeah.
And again, that falls to when you look at society. How does society define success about things? Look at how they define the success of an artist. How big of a venue can they sell out? Or a football game, how big of a venue can they sell out? How many endorsements can we get? How many people saw the game? How many, when you start looking at how the world defines success on these stages, which, they do the same thing with a church. I mean, you have this stage and you have this one guy up there, almost like a comedian kind of thing. How big of a room can they fill? That's how, if they can fill that room, they're a success. And it's not about that. We have the room available. Do we want it filled so that we can see more people hear the gospel and grow in their faith and their walk? Yes. I would love to see our rooms full every single Sunday, full of lost people hearing the gospel and coming to know Christ. I would love that. But that's a work that only God can do. We have to do our part as far as inviting people and being a part of all of that. God's called us to be a part of his work. If he's wanted to do it some other way, he could, but he's called us to be the vehicles of his work. And we have to do our part as far as inviting people. Again, the easiest evangelism is come and see. Just invite them. It's that simple. If you don't have the words to say, if you don't know what to do, invite them. Kevin can talk to him. I can talk to him. Justin can talk to him.
And that is probably the simplest way of beginning that disciple process, that discipling relationship. So I have a quote here that I want to read from Kevin's sermon because I really liked it, where Kevin said, "There's something about this Jesus that not only has caused them, Paul and Barnabas, that not only has caused them to have a change of heart and change of mind, but it changes the way they act in the world." And that was a really, it feels like it gets to the heart of this idea. I think that a lot of Christians have this tendency to come and take hold of Christianity intellectually or culturally, but not take hold of Christianity in such a way that my life now becomes something completely different than what the world would expect to see. How do we fulfill our obligation to be separate from the world while at the same time showing the world how differently we act in reaction to circumstances in our lives?
So Christ said that you will know them by their love, right? The way that we treat each other, the way that we treat those that persecute us, the way that we treat those that are around us, the people we work with, the people we run into in grocery stores, the guy standing on the street corner asking for money, the way we treat people is a big part of that. I've been reading in Genesis, and the thing that kind of jumped out at me for some reason is the fact that one of the biggest reasons God destroyed the earth the first time was because of the violence. It says that people were violent continually. They were evil continually. And it goes to the way that people were treating each other, right? That's the biggest part of it. It's the way that people are treating each other that he's tired of it. I'm done with it. He's going to wipe it clean. And again, you get this more positive golden rule in Christianity of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Whereas everywhere else is kind of the negative of that. And so it's that active action of the way you treat people on a day-to-day basis. I don't even remember what the question was.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to get at is the idea that Paul and Barnabas, I keep on wanting to say Paul and Silas. It's not yet. Paul and Barnabas are literally stoned by this community, or at least Paul is. Literally physically attacked by this community. And yet they continue to get up and enter not only this community again, but other communities. To me, that spells that shows just how vastly different Paul and Barnabas's motives are compared to, I think, what people in these communities were used to seeing. It not only shows how vastly different their motivations are, but it also shows their unwillingness to give up on the world as a whole. I'm not going to go over there and have my relationship with Christ in a corner. I'm going to do that here with you because this is something that really has value in my life. I really did think the way that you think now, and I found immeasurable value apart from that. And I'm not gonna leave here until I have adequately expressed to you just how valuable this
It's important.
the devotion to this lifestyle is. And I think that shows these people in this community not only Paul and Barnabas's character, but there must be something to what there must be something true to what they believe, because people don't act this way for their personal opinion or mythology or for even like their political opinions. You're not gonna, if you went and you were protesting or whatever and you got literally attacked, you get up and you go out the next day, like that demonstrates to these people you really believe what you're espousing that you believe. And so I think that this refusal to give up on the world, this refusal to sit quietly in the corner, is what kind of earmarks Paul and Barnabas, but also earmarks Christians in our communities where we interact regularly with the world. I used to deliver the mail, and I frequently would talk about, my relationships at church, my relationship with Christ, and how what new devotional or theological book I was reading, and because I refused to be the person who sat quietly in the corner over there and never really talked about what I believed, because I legitimately believed that if these people here would even come to know the faintest hint of what God has led me into realizing, their lives would be immeasurably changed for the better.
And that right there, that is discipleship.
And yes. Full circle, we did it. We came all the way around.
Got it.
This whole episode, I didn't intend it to be so heavy on discipleship, but I think that honestly, the conversation has been really valuable. So thank you, Elliot, for being here. I'm gonna have to take a clip of this and put it on the disciple pages, discipleship pages now. Which you should go and follow and like all those as well, because we have those new brand new discipleship pages, which are kind of representative of our small groups and connection groups where a lot of that discipleship happens in our church. We have the main ministry pages, which are focused on the reaching people for Christ part of our what is that? What's that called? It's our mission statement.
Our mission statement?
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. That the main pages focus on the reaching people for Christ aspect, but then we have the discipleship pages that focus on the building them up once they come aspect. And so I've really enjoyed a lot of the stuff. You were on a recent episode of Weekly Workshop, is a new series, and you should go watch it. It's gonna be
especially
here.
You teachers.
It's right there. Just see, you can click on it. I'll wait for you to, and then you can come back. But you don't need to, because this is the end of the episode. How was your salad? Two bites that you guys should take.
It was good. I'm about to devour this in a minute.
Talk about, this is your fault. Talk about the worst possible food to eat on.
It's so crunchy.
Whenever there's a microphone. Look here. I'm just gonna take one.
We'll both take a bite.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm sure people love the sound of that. You got some stuff.
I know. I don't have a napkin.
Aren't you glad you're on camera?
I am.
You can use
fantastic.
I'm
good.
I was gonna.
I'll use my pants like my mom told me not to.
Okay. All right. We have to be done. We're going over time. But thank you so much for being here.
Oh, we're way over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at it. It's over an hour. Fantastic.
Thank you so much for being here, Elliot.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you for all that you do.
So, yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. And do you want to pray us out into the rest of our week?
Sure.
Excellent.
Heavenly Father, just thank you for this opportunity and this time to be able to come together just to talk about your word and to talk about the things that you did through Paul and Barnabas and just to see to see the example that they were in not giving in to the persecution and being able to stand up and continue on with the fight. God, I pray that as we go throughout our day, that we would not back down from any persecution that's happening in our lives, any hardship that's happening in our lives, God, but that we would continue to do what you've called us to do, that we would not shy away from sharing the gospel, that we would have the courage and discipline to do so, God, that we would intentionally pour what you have shown us about yourself into somebody else in whatever form that may look like. Whether it's a weekly meeting or just taking that opportunity as you work together or drive together or whatever it is that you do. God, I just pray that we would take that opportunity and not let those things go to waste. And God, I just pray for the rest of this week that we would seek to make your name known, to make your name great, God, in all that we do. In your precious Son's name, amen.
Amen. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, Elliot. Thank you so much for watching. Takeaway happens right here on the Renewal Young Adults YouTube channel every Thursday. So make sure you hit that subscribe button below this video so that you get notified on Thursdays whenever we post it. So we'll see you next week.